Hello lovelies, how are you all doing today? I hope you're well. I'm okay. Still feeling a little bit flat, but getting there. So let's have some book chat, and today we're going to go back to the archives again for a little look. And this was Christmas, New Year-ish, a couple of years ago. And I'm just remembering the list of books that day. There were quite a few. There's a load of books to come, but I'm being a bit quicker chatting about them. Now, it also includes one that, it was a gift. Well, it was a gift from my mum. I think my mum had read it and sent it on to me, and I'm not sure why, because it is not my kind of thing. And I don't want to offend anyone, but it's chick lit. I can't be doing with chick lit. There's not enough hours in the day to read all the books I want to read, so I'm not going to waste hours reading chick lit. So I can't remember quite how, I might have been really disparaging about it. So I apologise in advance if any of you read it and like that sort of thing. But you know, that's the wonderful thing about people, isn't it? That we're all different, and thank goodness there are all sorts of books out there to enjoy, so that all of us, in theory, all of us ought to be able to find something we enjoy. So if you enjoy that kind of stuff, brilliant. Read away, enjoy away. It's just not my kind of thing. I can't stand it. Anyway, without further ado, let's dive in to see what I was reading a couple of years ago between Christmas and New Year. And it might have just gone into New Year as well, because there's quite a few on this list. I'm sure I can't have read them all in a week. Maybe I did. Maybe I had a week off. Can't remember. A few books. So, my guilty treat at Christmas, my treats for a tenner, Mystery in White. And what I loved, I'll talk about the book in a second, very quickly. My sister had read it. She'd seen the video, and then we were chatting, and she said, I couldn't believe when you brought up Mystery in White, because that's her little Christmas tradition, Christmas kind of secret pleasure, is to read a sort of a classic crime fiction. And it all started for her with this book, which she picked up a few years ago, read it and thought, I'm going to do that every Christmas from now on. And do you remember I was talking about the P.D. James short stories, Mistletoe Murders, that had been given to me, and I thought, I'm not sure. It was given to me by my sister, and that had been her little Christmas guilty secret read. And then I read it and loved it. Yay! So I think my sister's tradition of a classic, a crime classic, might become my tradition as well. I'm nicking it off her. This is now going to go to my mum, because I was telling my mum about it and she fancies it too. Oh, what a great read. Is it a ghost story or is it a crime story? I'm not gonna tell you. Again, rather like Canterville Ghost though, it's a bit Enid Blyton, it's a bit Scooby-Doo. It's great fun. I scoffed it all in one go, couldn't put it down. What's going on? Who did it? Who done it? What's happening here? Whose are the footsteps in the snow? Oh. Now, bear in mind it's written, when was it written? In the 20s. It's quite verbose at times, and at times I was thinking, shut up, get on with it. So you have to kind of just let yourself wallow in the style of it and not get impatient, as I did. But yeah, great fun, dead easy read, a lovely, I know it's not Christmas anymore, you don't have to read it at Christmas, but one of these kind of cold, chilly, that's the same as cold, wet, that's what I was trying to get at. We've been having so much rain, the dampness makes things feel even colder. All you want to do is get under a quilt and read. That's the perfect book for it. Next, do you remember? My mum got this free with some other books she bought, had been banging on about it to me, sent it to me, and I thought, not sure it's quite me, but you know, thank you Mum, I'll give it a read. I read about 30 pages and then I did this. Oh dear. Oh, it's just absolute, what a I mean, it was barely writing, it's more like typing. Formulaic, cliched, absolute nonsense. I knew exactly what was going to happen by the end of the book. What's the point of reading it? I know the ending already because it's so formulaic. Look, I'm sure that it's probably a load of you who've read it and really enjoyed it. Fine. It's taste, isn't it? It's very, very rare that I don't finish a book. Very rare. But, you know, it's just such poor writing. And I thought, I've only got so many more hours left on this planet. How many hours let's say I live another 40 years. How many hours in 40 years? I don't know. But, you know, even if I lived 10 lifetimes, that wouldn't be enough lifetimes to read all the books I want to read. It's like, where is it? Oh, it's over there. That bookmark that Barbara gave me. So many books, so little time. From now on, I'm not wasting time on books. The thing is, because it was a gift from my mum, the thing about gifts is you feel obliged, don't you, to finish it. If I ever give you a gift of a book, please do not feel obliged to finish it. If you get 30 pages in and you think, I don't like this, give it away again. Please don't waste any of your precious life on a book you don't like. That book, rubbish, absolute rubbish. So I chucked it across the room and I'll take it to the charity shop, of course. Went over to my bookshelves and thought, what's on my shelves I would like to read? I picked up Tove. I've never known how to pronounce it. Tove Jansson. She's a Finnish author. You will know her. Everyone will know her for the Moomin books. I've never been the Moomin's gorgeous, love the illustrations, but I've never been one of these avid Moomin nerds. I've got a friend who's an avid Moomin nerd, has to have Moomin everything. But I've read a couple of others of hers, so this is one of her books for adults. She came to doing books for adults, I think she was in her 50s by then. And so this one's called Sculptor's Daughter, and it's a collection of short pieces. Her father was a sculptor. Her mother was an illustrator, book illustrator. So her childhood, when was she born? So this must be so she was born in 1914. So these memories of hers, this is childhood memories, so they must all be around about 1920. Short pieces. Oh, how to describe it? She has a beautifully succinct way of writing. Her writing is so crisp and so clear. You're there straight away. But all the pieces, I've just said crisp and clear, but there's something of an impressionist quality. If we think of impressionist paintings, how they somehow, the detail may be fuzzy, but a moment of light is captured, a moment of temperature is captured, a moment of feeling is captured. And that's very much how my response was to these short stories. The light coming through the balustrades on a staircase, through the banisters, the feel of something, the texture of something under her fingers, a taste of something, a smell, a sound. Those are the things which spark these little jewels. It's sort of like if her childhood is a tiara, each of these short stories represents one of the jewels on the tiara. All of them stand up on their own beautifully, but as a whole there's just this wonderful sense of place, time, this bohemian upbringing. One gets the sense of this sort of wild child, wonderful wild child, and how that one can see how that wild child developed into the person that gave us the Moomins. Brilliant. Highly, highly, highly recommend it. I've got two of her others, the winter book and the summer book, which I'm actually going to send to Paul, because now that he's doing his writing course, I think they'll be really great for him to read. I think he's got to read something in the category of autobiography, so this would be brilliant. Yes, highly recommend it. Tove Janssen's Sculptor's Daughter, or some of these pieces also appear in the winter book. The winter book, again, is a collection of shorts. The summer book is more of a novel in a traditional sense. Brilliant. Then, how are we doing for time? Eek! Then this is really eclectic reading. So I've gone from crime, a crime, or is it ghost story, Finland in 1920, impressionist kind of jewels, to Haruki Murakami's What I Talk About When I Talk About Running. You may know him for novels like The Wind-Up Bird Chronicles, Wild Sheep Chase, Norwegian Wood. Now, I bought this, I had to look in it the other day. I bought it in 2009 when it came out in paperback, and it's sat on my shelf ever since. Haven't got around to reading it for whatever reason. My life changed a lot in 2009, and I think, reading stopped for a while. I had read, in the 2000s, I'd read a couple of his novels. I can't even remember which now. I mean, honestly, in those days, I used to read so much, at least a book a week, and loads of them have been forgotten. That's fine. I had a chat about this with someone. It's 2-3 years ago now, and they were asking about, we were talking about books. And it came up in the conversation, there was a book I'd read that she had also read, and I couldn't remember a thing about it. And she was like, well, how can you not remember any of the details of the book? It's like, well, because I read so many books. I'm not reading a book in order to cement it and be able to quote from it for the rest of my life. I'm reading it for entertainment. I read it, I move on, I read the next thing. Some books really do stick with me, but in the same way that, if you were to watch a 1-hour drama on TV every week for your entire life, you're not going to remember every single 1-hour drama you've ever seen, are you? You're just not going to remember. So, yeah, she was a bit she was almost trying to tell me off that somehow, well, you're not reading properly then if you can't remember. Well, how do you read properly? Anyway, the point is, I'm sure some of you get that too. All the classics I've read. Something came up the other day, and it was they were talking about Flaubert, Madame Bovary. Most of you will know. I read all of Flaubert. I can't remember any of them. Oh, that was it. It was something on French literature, because I was thinking they were. I must have watched something on Sky Arts or something, because they were talking about Genet and Cocteau and Sartre, and I had a phase where over the course of about a year, I kind of pretty much read every French classic, modern and a bit older. They've gone in and they've left again. Anyway, back to the Murakami. So I read a couple of his novels, and I didn't like the novels themselves in terms of, for me, excuse me, the character in one of them, I wish I could remember which one, it doesn't matter. But the character in one of them, there was a bit of a misogynistic tone to it, and I just didn't like it. However, I loved his writing. So, in other words, I didn't like the subject of the book, but I just knew that I was reading a great writer. You can be a great writer, and I'm not going to like your work necessarily, or you might write something else. And anyway, so when this came along, I thought, well, I know that I love his writing, his style, and I know I love running. It's got to be a no-brainer. So I finally, after 13, 14 years, took it down from the shelf to have a read. I loved it. I absolutely blooming loved it. This was another wallow book, because yes, the central the central theme of the book is running. I've talked about this before, how much I miss it. I dream about running. I have dreams in which I'm running. I've woken up before now crying because at some point in the dream, my dreaming me realises I can't run anymore, and then I'm, oh, that's awful. Do you have to be a runner or have been a runner to enjoy this book? I'm not sure. I'll come on to a bit more of that in a second. It's written, it jumps backwards and forwards in time a bit. He starts out roundabout, so it's the mid-noughties, he's 56. He's getting back into his running, he's training for the New York Marathon. But then there are times in the book he hops back to remembering the first time he ran a full marathon, which happened to be from Athens to Marathon. He wanted to see if he could do it. Idiot in the heat. So there are a lot of references to sort of training and that sort of thing, but I think it's written in a way that you could enjoy even if you're not a runner. But the point is, it's about so much more than that. It's about the process. It's about the mindset, the kind of person who enjoys and relishes in the long game rather than a sprinter. So this is what I mean about when I talk about sport, I'm not talking about sport. It's the life metaphors. The thing about long distance running is it's the process. It's the process and the joy simply of running, not for any particular goal. Of course, if you do a marathon, you know, the goal is to run a full marathon. And you might be at a stage in your running where you're interested in times and you want to beat your own times. But for the most part, putting on your shoes in the morning or evening, whenever you do it, and going out for a run, it's not for any reason other than the joy of running, of just being out there running. And the thoughts that go through one's mind as one runs. He runs and listens to music. I never listened to music, partly a safety thing. You know, as a woman running, I want to be aware of everything that's around me. So all those, the thoughts that, you know, are free to run through one's mind because you're out there for an hour or 2 hours. And just being in the moment and enjoying it for it being for the sake of what it is. I'm not being articulate today. I suddenly feel a bit cold, if I'm honest. As I was reading it, I was thinking about gardening too, how that's not instant gratification. I think that's what it all boils down to, is maybe there are two types of people. Those who've read Tolkien and those who haven't, no. Those who are, you know, long distance runners and those who are sprinters. Those who need to accomplish something quickly, finish something quickly. Like, you know, knitting. You know, do you want to knit a scarf because you can get it done in one day, or are you prepared to knit a really intricate Fair Isle blanket which might take weeks, months to accomplish? With the garden, there's that thing of we plant our seeds, and something, especially something like, say, parsnips, which we might even be planting in February, and we wait until Christmas for them, or purple sprouting broccoli, we plant those seeds in March, and we're not going to be starting to eat it until February, March the next year. So I definitely think I've got the long distance runner's mindset. I'm very much about the long game. It doesn't have to come quickly. I was talking about this with Paul on the phone the other day. I'm going to send him this book too, because Murakami is one of the authors on his reading list. Now, his novels are really quite long, so I thought, okay, well, this is an introduction, good introduction to his writing that's quite short. And like I said, yeah, it's the premise is all about him training for his marathon, but it's part travelogue. Is that the right word? Travelogue, yeah. It's about his time in Boston. Boston sounds lovely from the way he describes it. I think I would like to live in Boston. He's in Japan at times. So yeah, it's about so much more than running. Does someone describe it on the back more succinctly than me? Equal parts travelogue, training log, reminiscence. Yeah. It does say it's a must read for fans of this masterful yet private writer. I mean, I highly recommend. This is one of my highly recommends. I loved it, but I don't know. Do you remember when I was reading the books by the bookseller, Sean Bithell, and I was saying, I wonder if someone who's not a bookseller would enjoy these books as much as I've enjoyed them. And I know loads of people who have enjoyed them. So maybe loads of people would enjoy this even if they're not a runner. And instead of thinking about running, thinking in terms of those longer distance things. I cut my thought off a second ago about when I was chatting with Paul about it, of saying it's the difference between, in a way, the sort of the Instagram generation or the Instagram type of mindset, and I do Instagram, but that sort of instant impact. You know, like with say a garden, yeah, you can Instagram something, but how does that same thing look 3 months later? Have you continued to tend it, or that instant impact that you gave us, is it all covered in weeds and half dead now because you haven't done that long game with it? I think that makes a sort of sense. It makes sense to me. Loved it. Give it a read. Give it a read if you fancy. Right, really, really quickly now, because I know I've been gabbing on for ages. But it's kind of about the books and about life as well, isn't it? So I hope it's of company/entertainment value as well as book review value. Now this I've had on my shelf. I'm trying to work out how long it's been there. 6 months maybe. It was a book from Lorraine. Thank you, Lorraine. By Patrick Leigh Fermor. Now, she sent this to me after I talked in one of my videos. I was reminiscing about the time when I finally got to meet him. I didn't realise it was him. I was talking to him, telling him how fantastic Patrick Leigh Fermor is. It was when I had the bookshop. I went on and on and on, telling him about this brilliant writer. You must read him, and it was him. So this was a joy to read. 3 Letters from the Andes. He goes to the Andes in 1971 with a bunch of, I think, 6 of them. This wasn't published until 1991, I think. So it's 3 letters that he wrote home to his wife. They were never meant for publication. So it's quite a different take on his writing. I would say if you're going to read him, don't read this one first, because it's not typical. These letters he wrote for his wife. For publication, he's sort of topped and tailed them a bit, but it's still his wonderful, wonderful writing. I adore this man's books. He is, as I was saying when I talked to him previously, he's a polyglot. He just is the most amazing man, just learning languages and being able to use them almost instantly. He's also a polymath. His knowledge, his range of taste it's just huge and eclectic. Pardon me. Did I make any notes to share? Yes, I did. My impressions. So this thing about being a polymath. All of his books, the references they're multicultural. He references the classics. He references all sorts of other different languages. He references all sorts of literature. Like 2,000 years of literature he will reference, architectural references, fine art references, botanical references. I mean, is there anything this guy doesn't know about, or at least have a bit of a toe in the water of? I mean, he's just ridiculous. He's ridiculous. Also, in his works, he will drop into a different language. There'll be a sentence in a different language. Now, if it's in French, you know, I'm fine with that. I read and comprehend French better than I speak it. There might be a line of Spanish, but somehow, I don't know what it is about him, I understand it. So it must be that he, you know, the context he puts it in. But yeah, he drops in and out of different languages. His vocabulary is really extensive. So almost always with his books, there's almost always one word that I need to grab my dictionary and look up. But I like that. I like to learn as I go. So yeah. Thank you, Lorraine. I kept, you know, the other day I was saying I have different bookmarks for different books. I kept the card that Lorraine sent with it, and that was my bookmark for reading this. That is not going to go to the charity shop. That's going on my bookcase. Yes, a very, very scholarly man. I think it's that sort of, yeah, he's just a polymath. That's the best way to describe him. From scholarly to soulful to, I feel like I get everything from one of his books. I can't remember the titles. There's two really famous books that got him going, and these are the two I would recommend if you've never read him before. And they're the books that kind of started, he wrote them later in life, but they go back to him being, I think he was 19 years old, and he set out on foot. He walked from, famously, the Hook of Holland to Constantinople. He walked and had so many adventures on the way. So the books for that are, there are two books. The first one is called A Time of Gifts, and the second one is Between the Woods and the Water. A Time of Gifts, Between the Woods and the Water. Those are his two books about, I just read them, and he blew my mind. Beautiful, beautiful writing anyway. But I couldn't get my head around, who is this man? He is amazing. Oh yeah, my kind of modern day hero. And I met him. How wonderful. Right, finally, Esther, quick. I read Meadowland. That was my joint book of the year. I'm now thinking that Patrick Leigh Fermor ought to have been, I think I would have said that if it had been one of his other books, but The Three Letters, I loved them. I really, really loved them, and I'm so grateful, Lorraine. Thank you for sending. But it's not the best of his books, so that's why he didn't make it into the top one. So I was mentioning I was reading Meadowland. I'd read it, loved it. A modern take on agriculture and how we're changing again. I mentioned at the time, this is the other one I had been reading. I'd started. Adrian Bell, By Road. 100 years ago, the coming of mechanisation. Oh, I've loved it. I've absolutely loved it. And again, I was mentioning haymaking in the Meadowland. There's a haymaking section in this. It's just a beautiful little window into a moment in our agricultural history. It's set in Suffolk, so it's very specific to Suffolk and Suffolk soil. Oh, and the thing I loved about it is the mentions, because it is a time when they're transitioning from horse to, tractor. Of course, the horses are Suffolk punches. Suffolk Punch is a beautiful breed of heavy horse. The kind of my favourites, I think. And of the heavy horses, Suffolk Punches, they're quite light, they're quite slight. They are the most gorgeous colour. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Google, you should be able to find it, I would think. Suffolk Punch, as in punch, or punch that you drink. They're this beautiful russet ginger colour, almost. And their manes are, little fly, and their manes are sort of anywhere from dark strawberry blonde through to almost palomino blonde. Beautiful. They don't have feathered feet like some of the big heavy horses. They have the most gorgeous backsides. They have beautiful bums. They're such strong but compact horses. Yeah, so I loved it from that point of view. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Like I say, it's just a glimpse into another world, a world that's almost recognisable to us now, but was, you know, it's the last breath of that agricultural world. Gorgeous. I've actually got another of his books. This is Which Way Can We See? Is that run of books there? They're all Little Toller Press books. Little Toller Press is one of my absolute favourite presses. They're based in Dorset. All their books are to do with rural living. I think they're all reprints of classics. So I have another one of Adrian Bell's Men and the Fields. What's lovely with this is Nash, the artist, British artist that some of you may know for his war art. He's famously a war artist. He illustrated this the first time round. So all of his illustrations have been incorporated, and all of the colour lithographs that were in the original publication, just finding it, have been reproduced in here. So that's obviously the book cover when it was a first. Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Anyway, there's a few of it. I'm upside down, there's a few of them in there. So I'm not actually reading this one next. You might think that's the perfect follow-on. I've got a different one, which I'll tell you about another day, because I think that's long enough chatting on about books and tales. Well, I still haven't got round to reading that other Adrian Bell. It's up there. I'll get round to it at some point. Too many other lovely things keep somehow coming into my life, as in books. Yeah, I'll definitely get around to reading it one day. And there was another thought prompted by that book that my mum had sent that I thought I'm pretty sure I would have called her and said, okay, thanks for sending it. It's not my kind of thing. I ain't reading it. I'll give it to the charity shop. But it's a weird one, isn't it, when someone gives you a book. Excuse me. When someone gives you a book or gifts a book to you, there's almost, well, this is what I get anyway, I almost feel obliged to read it, despite the fact that I think I don't want to read it. It's almost like, imagine, you know, someone sends me a DVD of a film, of a fantastic film, and I think, oh, brilliant. You know, someone sends me a DVD of, I've forgotten the title of it now. Oh my goodness. And I watched a bit of A Room with a View, the one with Helena Bonham Carter and Julian Sands. Someone sends me that DVD and I think, brilliant, fantastic, put it on and watch it. But then someone else sends me a DVD and it's back-to-back 5 episodes of EastEnders. I don't want to watch it. I'm not interested. It's not my thing. But yeah, it's a really weird one with books, isn't it? And I suppose ultimately, if you are good enough friends with that person, or like on that occasion, I think it was my mum, you get in touch to say, listen, thanks ever so much. It's just not me. I'm going to hand it over to someone else. Just be honest about it, because what a daft thing for any of us to do, to spend our precious time ploughing through something we do not like. Yeah, I think we all need to be brave on that one, don't we? To say, I really appreciate your act of giving. Just don't appreciate the gift. It's awful. I can't even bear to say it. You know what I mean, don't you? Anyway, yeah, the number of times I've had a book that's been given to me and I've read it and I've hated it and it's been a struggle to get to the end, and I think, Vivi, why are you doing it? Just tell the person who gave it to you. Go online and read a synopsis of the book and then tell your friend, thanks, that was great. But except you don't want to do that, because then if you say, yay, that was great, they might go, oh, that author's written 10 more, here you go. No. Yeah, I think honesty probably is the best policy, isn't it? Right, that's it for today. I'll see you again soon, I hope. I've no idea for what. We'll find out when we get there. So until the next one, please look after yourselves. Happy reading, and hopefully happy reading what you want to read. You're not being forced to read something. I will see you all again really soon. Cheerio.